Welcome to the Double R Show, the podcast that features everything about North Lincoln County. The Double R Show, directed and produced by Paul Robertson and hosted by the voice of Lincoln City, Roger Robertson.
Welcome to the Double R Show, Double R along with son Paul, and it will be an interesting program dealing not so much with politics, but with what occurred in Salem.
Yeah, state government and the federal government and some of the impacts that we're seeing across the board here. We're going to be talking with Attorney General Dan Rayfield. He was just in town, and we were able to catch him, so a statewide office we'll get to interview. And then our representative and our senator also on the program.
David Gomberg and Dick Anderson, all coming up right after this.
Zantello Law Group has moved. I'm Josh Zantello, and our law firm is now located across from the Lincoln City Community Center on Northeast 21st. Our law firm of knowledgeable professionals stand ready to assist you in life's matters.
The Oak Ridge Boys American-made farewell tour. The legendary Oak Ridge Boys, celebrating 50-plus years of touring. The unmistakable four-part harmonies that have won the Oak Ridge Boys Grammy, Dove, CMA, and ACM awards.
Come on home if you're hurting, 'cause you're never alone.
The Oak Ridge Boys, July 27th, Chinook Winds Casino Resort. Get tickets now at ChinookWinds.com, the Chinook Winds box office, or by phone at 1-888-MAIN-ACT. July 27th, Chinook Winds Casino Resort. The Oak Ridge Boys, American-made farewell tour. Chinook Winds, where concerts are better at the beach.
Attorney General Dan Rayfield in Lincoln City to host a town hall Monday night, safeguarding Oregon against federal oversight. Attorney General, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always fun to be out here.
You had quite a crowd here tonight.
Well, you know, I can never gauge crowds. What I will tell you, and I mean this most genuinely, I don't say this to every city that I go to, is that the questions were incredibly diverse. The audience was incredibly live. And I don't know if it's just the summer and, you know, the weather's warmer and people are stirring, but it was very impressive.
Did you hear anything that surprised you?
The one thing that continued to crop up, and I expected it, but I didn't expect the personal nature of how it was impacting more than federal employees, was the NOAA layoffs and the impact to the economy and how that trickles out, not just in with the individuals that have been laid off. That was incredibly striking. It's incredibly relevant to some of the lawsuits that we have filed, but it was good to hear and see the multitude of issues.
Talk a little bit about the lawsuits that you filed against the federal government, you and a number of other attorney generals across the United States, correct?
Yeah. In this role, one of the things that we always talked about in running for this position was, as Oregon's Attorney General, how do you protect the values of Oregonians? How do you enforce the rule of law? And that's become kind of a new thing. And you have a president right now that is making decisions in the dark. They're making decisions that are consistently being ruled unconstitutional or against the rule of law. And so we have been holding the Trump administration's feet to the fire to make sure that they are following the rules. Now, you're president, you get a ton of powers when you're president, right? The thing is, you still got to follow the Constitution. You still got to follow the rules. And that's what we're trying to do. You can make some of these decisions. You just got to do them in the right place. And often these decisions should be made in Congress, not, you know, in a closed room door.
You do have a Supreme Court, though, that upholds a lot of what the president has to say.
Well, I might disagree a little bit with that. And so what I have found in a lot of the lawsuits that we have, right now Oregon's engaged in 29. Most of these cases, we have gotten positive court rulings in lower courts and even in the upper courts. Now, in the Supreme Court, you've had some technical issues in the way that there are procedural issues, some of the technical things that you think about how injunctions can be implemented. There have been no rulings on the merits of these cases. I would say that one of the most interesting cases that we had was the tariff case, where the state of Oregon, actually, we led that case. We went back east to New York. We had a Trump-appointed judge, we had a Reagan-appointed judge, and a Democratic-appointed judge, and we won that panel 3-0 in a very bipartisan fashion, saying, hey, if you want to do tariffs, do them the right way.
During the course of the discussions tonight, I heard you say the current session, the just completed, very difficult session is how you described it.
Yeah. In the years that I have been engaged in politics and watching the dynamics of the current legislative session, you have the uncertainty of our economy, right? So the back and forth of these federal layoffs, you have the back and forth of funding being yanked back from states, you have the tariffs that are impacting our economy. So you have this uncertain economic outlook, which then actually reduced the available revenue for the state as they project for the next 2 years. On top of that, you have the uncertainty at the federal government. Right now, the 29 lawsuits that we're engaged in are protecting $3.3 billion of funding. Now imagine that you're a legislator trying to craft a budget for $3.3 billion of federal funding that's tied up potentially in lawsuits. So it's a very tenuous and difficult place to be if you're a legislator right now.
What is the most intense subject matter that you've got to deal with right now statewide?
You know, what I will tell you is that the issues that you face at the Department of Justice are personal in very significant ways. And whether you're dealing with drug trafficking in a criminal context, whether you are advising agencies on critical, important issues that are going to impact people on the ground in very significant ways, whether you are defending cases for the state or proactively pursuing cases in a way that you see justice for consumers, all of those things are incredibly impactful. It's an incredibly meaningful role. And I couldn't tell you that I couldn't be more proud to serve on behalf of all Oregonians in this role.
A lot of talk tonight about ICE and the immigrant issue. Would you talk a little bit about that, the state's position?
Yeah, and often when people are talking about ICE and trying to understand that, they're thinking about our sanctuary status laws here in this state. And you'll hear other states have passed these laws as well. And the idea behind sanctuary status laws are that we use state resources for state purposes. And you think about your local tax dollars, right? You want your local police officers enforcing, your traffic laws, your burglary, your murder laws, right? You don't want them to be pulled away from those critical things to then be compelled to be working on immigration issues. And that's kind of this public safety focus on our sanctuary state laws. And that's where you're getting this rub right now, where the federal government doesn't like these laws. However, we have a constitution that says, and it's very important, that the federal government cannot come into any state and commandeer our resources for their aims. Just imagine what that would do for public safety, where they would come in and yank our already thin resources in public safety to other opportunities. It's also incredibly important from just a public safety perspective. If you have a community that is fearful of going into the courtroom to testify even as a witness, and this goes on in, say, a domestic violence case or another case, you are actually prohibiting our ability to prosecute crimes here in this state. And so that's the interesting policy rub that you're seeing play out right now.
As Attorney General, one message do you want to leave with Lincoln County?
One thing that I would say is that I have absolutely enjoyed being here and learning, from folks that have come out. And I think that's the most important thing, is that we are a small enough state that our government is accessible to us. And a lot of people, I don't think, realize that. You can take your state representative or your state senator out to coffee, and they will go out to coffee with you. And it's the same thing here at the Department of Justice. I've built a career on trying to be accessible, listening and learning and knowing that I don't know everything, but really focusing on what we want our state to look like. But that requires everybody's engagement, and I know we're all busy, right? I'll get home and, my wife and I'll be struggling to figure out what we're going to cook for dinner for our son, right, who's 13 and incredibly picky. And we're trying to break him of that, but it's a challenge. But, I know we're busy, but the more that we can engage together and talk about what we need as communities, the better we'll all be, and the better the state will be, the better the country will be.
You'll find a book for every occasion at Bob's Beach Books. Something to read as you relax by an open fire? We have it. Studying a particular topic? We have that too. Traveling to a far-off land? Discover it first by reading. Bob's Beach Books in the Ocean Lake area of Lincoln City? Come discover.
If you're looking for great early garden fresh produce, it's Kenny's IGA in the Bay Area of Lincoln City. 4 generations of Morgans caring for your every grocery need. All of your favorite beverages, a full deli, meat, produce, and of course, groceries.
The wild-eyed Southern boys are back. 38 Special. Rocking into the night. Saturday, September 6th, Chinook Winds Casino Resort. Get tickets now at ChinookWinds.com, Chinook Winds box office, or by phone at 1-888-MAIN-ACT. Don't miss 38 Special, live. Chinook Winds, where concerts are better at the beach.
Welcome back to the Double R Show. With us is Senator Dick Anderson, and this current week we had the opportunity to have the Attorney General in Lincoln City. You were on the platform with him. How did you receive the crowd?
Thank you, Roger, for first having me once again. It's nice to be a repeater.
I love it.
Invited back, as they say. The forum I thought was very exciting. I was pleasantly pleased with the crowd, both in size and demeanor. I thought it was very reflective of the people I know in Lincoln City and generally how they act, and mix in a little politics. I was a little nervous, but pleasantly surprised of how well it went.
Okay, the legislative session is over. There may well be a interim session again. The governor may call for a special session. Heard anything on those lines?
Have not, other than what's been in the press. I was actually recently on a virtual meeting, also kind of getting some updates, and there was no mention of specific times. Generally, July is not a good time to have a special session. Legislators are tired, cranky, and lobbyists and everybody else. So it's just worthwhile to get them out of town, take a vacation. I still expect September when we have legislative days. Legislators are coming in anyway, easy to grab them, get your quorum, be available. If that's the case, then that gives August as a month that needs to have some committee work done. Unless you're going to just try to pass the bill that failed with no modifications, you need a new committee, you need some action and proposal of a new bill. That would take the month of August, and that would take different people than have been on to date on this Committee of Transportation.
With the legislative session just passed, your take, good, bad, indifferent?
I would say, again, good. I always struggle with 160 days. That's a long time. Mm-hmm. In this case, it was 158. It's very tiring, and that proved to be the case. I think for myself, very bipartisan session for me. I work well across the aisle with Democrats and Republicans. I got my own bills moved through very well. I was pleased with what popped out at the other end, and the governor is signing. So for me, it was a good session to that regards. And I think for the people of Oregon, not bad. There were some disappointments.
And I was going to ask you, what disappointed you, if there is?
I think the biggest one, Roger, was the transportation bill, the lack of a transportation bill. We knew it last summer. We knew it was needed. Did a road show around the state, gathering information. We then had 158 days to pass a bill. And for it not to be able to be pushed forward and shaped so that it would be passed was a real disappointment. And
what lacked?
It's easy to point, Monday morning
quarterback. Yep.
I would say a lack of leadership, lack of who was the leader of this forum. I think I can't help but lay blame on the governor and the leaders of the two chambers. They got the power, they got the direction, and then the committee itself working through with enough options and listening to both sides. It's hard work to negotiate, to put a bill together that, especially with taxes, we knew there were going to be increased taxes, and that's a tough point. So that was, for me, the biggest disappointment. I got involved late in the game, actually the last week, because I'm, I guess, what they would call a moderate Republican. They were looking for a vote. I had a lot of people in my office, Republicans, where we were talking about would we cast a vote for this bill. We had the other side talking with us, chairs and everything else, wanting to trade favors for a vote. At the end of the day, we weren't interested because the bill wasn't a good bill. It would not have accomplished anything, and that's the trouble.
When you look at your district, anything specifically that you can hang your hat on that says Senator Dick Anderson brought this back to the district?
Oh, yeah, I'll do the political stuff and be putting out all sorts of newsletters and
Very good.
That stuff. But, Roger, I always chuckle because typically politicians talk about the pork they brought back and meaning money to the district. I do both policy and pork, so to speak. But, to name a few things in Lincoln County, I've got a nice list of stuff here. One, there's a new Office of Forestry building being built in Newport. It, funny, has overrun its budget, needed like another $6 million, and that got funded. The dollars went to the Pacific Coast Salmon Fund. Dollars went to the Collins Creek Land Acquisition Project. City of Newport wastewater plant improvements got millions for additional affordable housing projects, and primarily some senior housing. And then I was like summer school. Miley Tolan was pleased to see some summer school money come into play. And so those are just a few of the things in Lincoln County that got touched. A lot more, when I go south, $100 million to Coos Bay, Port of Coos Bay for dredging to tie in with the container operation that they're working. So there's money around. Money got put forth. I feel privileged to be able to grab what I did, and sorry about those who didn't get any.
Home-style cooking in a hometown atmosphere. Hi, I'm Adina from Zeller's Restaurant in Rose Lodge in Lincoln City. Join us daily for good fun and great food. You can even kick up your heels at Zeller's.
Northwest Septic Service is your one-stop shop for all your septic needs.
Northwest Septic Service offers pumping, maintenance, repair, and inspections with one call, 541-994-6977.
Buying or selling a home? Northwest Septic Service can inspect your sewer line or an entire septic system.
Old or failing septic system? Northwest Septic Service can rejuvenate most drain fields, saving you thousands of dollars. 541-994-6977.
Serving Lincoln, Tillamook, and Yamhill counties, Northwest Septic Service.
We at La Roca are proud of our food, but don't take our word for it. Read the reviews. One person wrote, the service was friendly and efficient. Another writes, La Roca has become one of our favorites because it's authentic Mexican food.
State Representative David Gomberg joins us now. Again, the legislative session is complete. Your assessment, David?
Oh, my goodness, Roger. A difficult session, a very difficult session. And if anybody were to ask me why, I would say, well, first of all, we came back with a very disappointing revenue forecast, which is to say we had less money to spend.
Surprisingly so.
Yeah, and in Oregon, of course, we have to pass a balanced budget, so we can't spend more than we bring in. So learning in March and then May how much money we had meant that we had to step back and start reducing state budgets. That's hard work. The second thing is uncertainty from the federal government. That was looming over us all the way through, and it meant that we need to put money in reserves in case, I say in case, the federal government decides to cut Medicaid.
Backfill.
Or food programs or tuition support, a lot of different kinds of things that are critically important to Oregonians and the Oregon economy. And the third thing was the ongoing challenge of the partisan divide. And while the session was fairly civil, at the end of the day, we still had a divide that was deeper and wider than I've seen it in many, many years. And that underscored a lot of the efforts that went underway during the course of the session as well.
Was that because of transportation primarily, or were there other items in there?
Well, there were plenty of issues on the table where disagreements filtered to the surface. But at the end of the day, it was the challenge that the majority party has the responsibility to govern. The minority party has the responsibility to try and become the majority party.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was part of it. And that's always part of it. But there was also a fundamental attitudinal distinction in values. And we had some members, not all members, but a few members on the far left and on the far right that really colored the tenor of the session and brought a lot of these frictions to the surface. And that's disappointing.
Now, you spent a lot of time in the big chair, if you will, as running the legislative session.
Well, if only there were a chair up there, Roger.
Well, you stood most of the time.
Yeah,
yes.
I stood at the podium, sometimes
right.
for 5 or 6 hours at a go. Yes,
Why is that?
Well, I was elected by the body, not just by the Democrats, but by the entire body to be the Speaker pro tempore. That's technically the number 2 position in the House. And the main job of the Speaker pro tem is to stand in for the Speaker whenever needed. And the Speaker, for a variety of reasons, chose to spend less time at the podium, which meant that I spent more time up there. Now, that's interesting because you're running the meeting. You've got to pay attention to every word. You've got to be prepared for motions, for procedural maneuvers. You've got to listen to the content of presentations to make sure they're relevant, or in case somebody objects to words that were used. You've got to pay attention every moment. And over the course of 5 hours, that's
difficult.
That can start to wear you down.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, the other members, that they're at their desks, and I'm not saying they aren't working. They are working, but sometimes they're working on their emails. Sometimes they're working on speeches. Sometimes they're working with their staff. Certainly, they're spending time working with other members. So the time that I spent up at the podium was time that I couldn't spend on those other tasks. And I was glad to be there. I was proud of the work that I did. I was certainly proud to be selected by my colleagues to do that important job. But I also, it wore on me from time to time.
Switching gears just momentarily, you were directly responsible for the Attorney General being in Lincoln City. That is something pretty foreign to Lincoln City and the Oregon coast, having a statewide person like that here in town.
Well, I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that the last time we had an Attorney General here was fairly normal times. And that they came and they talked about public safety. They talked about consumer protection. They mostly talked about a lot of internet scams that were going on. And there were maybe a dozen or 15 people in the room. Well, this week we had 150 people in the room and standing room only in the back. And mostly concerns about the uncertainties of the federal government, which I kind of referenced a few minutes ago. So you were there. You heard people standing up and saying, I've worked for the federal government for 15 years, but I'd just been promoted. Now I'm on probation, and they fired me without warning, and they claimed it was for cause, so I can't get unemployment. I've heard that story over and over and over again. We certainly know that losing those jobs here in Lincoln County has an effect on our local economy because we've got that science hub at the Hatfield Center, at NOAA, and at Pac West, just south of Newport. So an effect on our economy, effect on our environment as we lose that focus on ocean science. But it goes much deeper than that because it's grants for water and sewer programs or housing programs that have been withdrawn and canceled. It's support for health care. The Medicaid cuts could affect a third of the kids in Oregon that are on the Oregon Health Plan or seniors that are looking for health care support. And lack of those reimbursements is going to affect the sustainability of our local hospitals that can't pay the bills without those federal dollars coming in. It affects food programs that are available or financial aid for our students. The list goes on and on and on of different kinds of things that we heard at that meeting were concerns. And why did it come up at this meeting? Because our Congress people go back to Washington, D.C., and they vote one way or the other, but at the end of the day, Congress is not driving this bus right now. So they can't do very much. The Oregon legislature can't do very much, but we are a nation of laws, and so it's our Attorney General who brings these lawsuits to protect Oregon jobs and Oregon people and Oregon values. And as you heard, he's brought nearly 30 lawsuits against the federal government where the Attorney General believes that the law is not being followed and these programs are being improperly eliminated.
Before we let you get away from here, giving the legislative session a rating for this current session, A, B, C, D, E, F, where are you at?
It was the most disappointing session I've ever served in. And I've served in sessions where half the members walked out. But this one there were too many big issues that didn't get to the finish line. I mean, yes, we took care of our schools, but not well enough. We sort of took care of wildfires by finding some new funding sources, but not enough money there. We didn't take care of roads at all, and that's going to come back to roost when we don't have fog lines in the fog. We don't have ice and snow removal in the winter. We don't have potholes being filled or accidents being responded to. That's going to be very serious. And a lot of coastal issues, particularly response to the wildfire survivors in North Lincoln County who are still waiting for help, that we weren't able to provide support for. So a lot of disappointments in this session. Some things to be proud of, some things to be pleased with, but at the end of the day, big things that should have ended differently and better.
Wouldn't it be great to have all your insurance needs handled by one agency? This is Charlotte Lado with Farmers Insurance and the Insurance Store. Visit our office next to the Wildflower Grill in Lincoln City. Let us be your one stop for your personal, commercial, health, and Medicare insurance needs.
It's been fun having the opportunity to talk with Senator Anderson, Representative Gomberg, and Attorney General Dan Rayfield, having them all here to give their take on what happened in Salem.
And then also just, the federal impacts of new administration and the some of the lawsuits, frankly, that the Attorney General has filed on behalf of Oregonians.
It would behoove you, if you know of somebody that is affected by this, you send this information to them where they can listen to this podcast. It may be something that winds up saving them down the road. Now, other activities in and around the Lincoln City Community Kids Art Workshop at the Lincoln City Cultural Center. This is Thursdays 3 to 6. Drop-in charge is only $5. 10 passes for just $40. Lincoln City Caregiver Support Group, sponsored by Alzheimer's Association of Oregon and Southwest Washington. This is the first and third Thursdays of each month, 10 to 11:30 at the Lincoln City Senior Center. All veterans are invited to a free homemade soup and sandwich luncheon sponsored by the Lincoln City Elks Lodge, 1350 Southeast Orr Avenue. This is twice a month, the second and fourth Wednesdays, noon until 2. And the Nature Conservancy is seeking volunteers. Want to talk about that, Paul?
Yeah, so, the Nature Conservancy is often looking for these docents up on Cascade Head, and so throughout the May-September period, PQ season, they're looking for folks to be part of that, and they've got some trainings that they're putting on. So reach out to orvolunteers@tnc.org to learn more.
And the first Christmas in July Turkey Drive is going to be taking place on Friday, July 25. This is sponsored by North Lincoln Fire Department, the Eagles, and Les Schwab Tire Center here in Lincoln City. Selling turkeys.
Turkeys in July for, they're going to let them fatten up, they say.
Yes.
Still, but for the fall, yeah.
Stop into Les Schwab and talk to Tiffany. That's where the tickets will be sold. Anything else your side of the table?
Yeah, so just this Saturday, the Cascade Head Biosphere Collaborative is putting on another Biosphere Beach Ambassador. That's on July 12th, 9 a.m., so join Josh down there where you do not drive on the beach. I like to get that out there each time.
Do not.
We do not, but the tide pool's down there, and he's going to be doing some interpretive work down there. Then also coming at the end of the month, I want to talk a little bit about this one. This one is Art on the Beach, the big graphics that we've done.
Right.
But it's coupled with the sand art competition that we've also been doing the last couple of years. And so for $20, you get a 20 by 20 square. Anybody's welcome to come have a team. Great prizes. The big grand prize is provided by Chinook Wind, so it's about a $500 package, overnight stay, 2 show tickets, Rogue River kind of.
Thank you, Chinook Wind.
Yeah, thanks for them. And then there's a $200 cash prize and a $100 cash prize. So just to play in the sand, you can win.
Whereabouts on the beach?
Yeah, thank you. We got Rhodes End State Park. It'll be the place, and so that'll be on the 26th, starting at 8 a.m., and we'll have judging taking place at about 10 a.m. So get your sticks and start drawing on the sand.
It'll be fun. That'll do it to the doings on a Double R Show. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, so you, your family, and friends around the world and across the street can join us on a Double R Show. For Paul and Jenna, I'm Double R. Have a happy day.
You've been listening to The Double R Show. Join Roger and Paul Robertson as they explore everything about North Lincoln County. The Double R Show, produced by Always Productions and hosted by Roger Robertson. Have a story? Email contact@allwaysproductions.com or call 458-201-3039. For the Double R Show, I'm Jana Grawn.